The third day of testing for the Formula One teams gets underway in Jerez at about 8 o'clock this morning. Jenson Button was fastest in his McLaren yesterday. Red Bull had a troubled day out on the track. Sebastian Vettel was forced to finish early because of problems with his new RB10 car. Well, Mercedes had a good day and Nico Rosberg drove almost 100 laps in the team's new W05 Silver Arrow. Former Mercedes team principal Ross Brawn thinks the German manufacturer is in a strong position going into the new season.
I think there's going to be carnage at the beginning of the year, from a reliability point of view, and also a performance point of view, because managing the fuel, working out the best way of running a race, it's going to be fascinating to see. I was comfortable with where I left the team, and I think the team are going to demonstrate all the work and effort they put in the last couple of years. You know, we started this project a long time ago, and I think it will pay off. And I've got a lot of very good friends there who I want to succeed. And I'll watch with some pleasure if Mercedes can win the championship this year.
Well, Brawn was speaking at the Royal Opera House, where he was inducted into the Motorsport magazine Hall of Fame. He left his job at Mercedes last year and isn't planning on an immediate return to Formula One, but it seems that he's open to offers.
Ross, great to have you here.
I'm focused on my fishing at the moment, and no discussions, no comments. I've got a lot of, I hope, very enjoyable fishing trips planned. Come the summer, you know, maybe I'll take stock and things will change. Never say never, but it's not my plan. And any approaches I've had have been you know, with a polite rebuff, very flattered, but simply that I don't want to get involved or engaged or distract anyone from what they should be doing.
Now, it's day 3 of testing in Spain, and the new rule changes have been having a big impact on the cars ahead of the new F1 season. Craig Slater is live at the Jerez track again for us. Very good morning to you, Craig. World champion Sebastian Vettel completed just 11 laps over the first 2 days. What's been going wrong?
Yes, a wretched start for Sebastian Vettel. He flew out of here yesterday, having completed, as you say, only 8 laps yesterday, 3 on the first day. Compare that to last year, he managed 174 laps over the opening 2 days, so you can see that Red Bull have a lot of catching up to do. In general, there's been a problem with Renault-powered cars. The 3 teams here powered by them have only managed 38 laps over these opening 2 days. Renault themselves have taken responsibility for this. They have flown in extra parts overnight. They won't elaborate on exactly what's gone wrong, but it's to do with the energy recovery system and the way the various elements of that interact. That's the battery part of the car, if you like. And my understanding is that part of the problem is the strong electromagnetic force created by this big new battery in the car is affecting the instrumentation on the car, which is absolutely vital to it. It controls all the systems on the car itself. And Renault's own brochure in describing how delicate a negotiation it is to balance these two forces say it's like carrying a house of cards through a storm. So these cars are really built on the edge, and unfortunately Renault can't quite get the balance right at the moment, but they're hoping what they've done overnight will make the difference.
Vettel not the only one having problems though, Craig.
No, that's right. As I say, Caterham had some issues, although their housing is slightly different to the way Red Bull's is. Force India had an overheating issue, but that was rather an exception compared to, with regard to the Mercedes-powered cars. Over the 2 days, they've managed 248 laps, so they're going pretty well. But yes, generally speaking, getting to grips with these new engines has been tough, and at the moment it's a case of reliability being the key factor rather than outright performance. The team's just trying to get these cars to work rather than looking at lap times exactly at this stage.
Quite crucial, isn't it? Is it advantage to the Mercedes-powered cars?
Very much so at this stage. Nico Rosberg in particular yesterday, mighty impressive. 97 laps completed by him, more laps than all the Renault-powered cars put together. He was doing 21 lap stints as well, so race-style stints. He had aero paint on his car, and that suggests that Mercedes are much further down the road than the other teams. They're already looking at the kind of aero packaging of their car itself. Rosberg's odds for the championship were 20-1 last week. They've been slashed to 10-1. So Mercedes looking good. McLaren a decent start from them as well. Jenson Button talking about how all the Mercedes teams are working together on these new engines. There's a good deal of cooperation from them. McLaren's suspension drew a lot of admiring glances yesterday. That could have good aerodynamic benefits, and we'll see Lewis Hamilton in the car again today for Mercedes, so that should be interesting. After that crash he had on day one, he'll be looking to make up lost ground. But for the fans here, the highlight of the day will be the appearance of Fernando Alonso, the home favourite. Ferrari have made a solid start too, but we expect maybe 15,000-20,000 fans here at Jerez today to give Alonso an early season boost. A key year for him, his 5th year at Ferrari. That was the same year Michael Schumacher won his first championship after he joined Ferrari. A lot of pressure on Alonso to deliver in 2014.
Yes, thank you very much, Craig, from a chilly but dry Jerez.
So it's day 3 of testing in Spain, and the new rule changes have been having a big impact on the cars as we gear up to the new Formula 1 season. Craig Slater is live at Jerez for us. Craig, very good morning. So what's happening?
Well, it's been a brisk start to day 3, Mike. We've already had 5 cars on track. We've already had 1 breakdown, though. The caterham has been pushed back into the garage after Robin Friends appeared to stall it, we think. Ted Kravitz, is that what's gone wrong there?
Just having a word with some of the engineers. He went into the pit lane, went onto the pit lane speed limiter, and the car went into anti-stall. And then Robin, who's a rookie, he's their test driver, didn't really know what to do, so he just stopped the car, and they said, OK, leave it there, and we'll bring you back. So just one of the complexities of these new systems. But that caterham has the looks only a mother could love, doesn't it? Many people in the fans in the grandstand think these new pencil noses, if we're going to call them that, look faintly ridiculous. But that's just a quirk of the new rules. The rules have been not particularly well thought out. They just say that you need to have a certain element at that stage, which is a certain width, which is what the caterham have got. They've kept that for aerodynamic reasons, keeping the nose up high. But then you need to end up at the end of it with a point of bodywork which is a bit lower, and the best way aerodynamically to do that is just to have this little finger going down to the front. But pretty it ain't.
Noses apart, the big talking point has been the performance, or lack of it, of the Renault power units thus far. It's particularly affected Red Bull and Toro Rosso. The world champion Sebastian Vettel left here yesterday having just completed 11 laps. But can I put this to you in a different way? Aren't Renault going about their business in a typical, maybe even the correct fashion for pre-season, trying to achieve a peak of performance and working slowly on reliability? Isn't that the way to do it in pre-season testing?
I don't think Renault know at the moment whether they are aiming for peak performance. They're just trying to get the cars reliable. And the thing is that there's a deadline coming up. The beginning of the season marks a point at which you can't change the engine fundamentally for performance. There's a homologation rule which comes in, says what you've got at the start of the season you can't change apart from reliability problems. So if they are working on performance, then they've got really lots of things to do and not a huge amount of time to do it in, because come March the 10th, when the cars actually get shipped to Australia, that's it. It's frozen, at least with, say, for example, the January transfer window, or even a transfer window later on in football. You'd be able to buy in more talent to improve your team. Not the case. In the middle of a season in Formula 1, the engine you start with in terms of performance is the one that you're going to carry on to the end of the season. In reliability terms, they can still make fixes to it. So if Renault are looking performance, they've got to hurry up about it, because they haven't got too much time to achieve that.
They're under pressure. Ferrari under pressure. They haven't had a title for a while. Fernando Alonso in the car for these last 2 days of the test. Any specific reason why he's chosen these days?
Well, indeed so. It's a habit that Fernando Alonso has. He knows that the first 2 days of testing are always tend to be a bit of a waste of time. The car is new. Engineers want to do systems checks. It's all quite boring. Sometimes the car breaks down. Quite often, as we've seen, the car breaks down. So Alonso never does the first 2 days of the first test. It's a little thing he has in his head, and he was proved quite right. The car only did 8 laps or something on the first day, even though Kimi Raikkonen did manage a good handful, 30 or 40 laps yesterday, and professed himself quite happy with the car. So Alonso always likes to do the last 2 days of the test. Once the car is sorted, it's running, everybody's happy with it, and indeed he's been out early on here today, just after 9 o'clock. We started with some measuring devices with some sensors attached to the car to measure airflow over the rear wheels and the front wheels, and Mercedes also with some measuring devices and their own little cameras, the little portable cameras that you tend to put on your helmet or your bike when you go out for a ride. That was a few cameras on the Mercedes, so they want to understand. That won't just be for their own viewing pleasure. They'll be looking back at the rear wing. It's where it was pointed to see if there's any deflection or any movement that they don't know about. So they'll be analysing that in the garage.
Just a final word about the Mercedes teams in general, who seem to have stolen a march on the rest a little bit further down the road in terms of their preparation. Jenson Button saying that they're sharing information quite freely between the various, they're cooperating as almost like a super team. Williams, McLaren, Mercedes itself and Force India. Is that really going on? Are Mercedes really going to divulge all their secrets to the customer teams?
Well, it all goes through Mercedes. So all the Mercedes teams, Williams, Force India, McLaren and indeed Mercedes Grand Prix, the works team, feed information back to the engine people in the middle, and then the engine people then feed information back out. So it's not as if the people are going from McLaren into Mercedes to tell them what they've learned about the car. It's all going through a central hub. But that's happening with the same in all the Renault-powered teams. They'll all be feeding their problems, which were the same yesterday with the battery and the energy recovery system, back to Renault centrally, and then Renault centrally will be coming up and saying, oh, well, another team has found this, so you might want to try that.
Thanks very much, Ted. Good listening to you. Let's, before we go, just listen in to these V6 engines. Not everyone an acquired taste. We haven't heard too much of the Renault engine. Caterham are just getting ready to go out. Just let's sample the sound just for a few moments here in Jerez.
Yes, thank you. Yes, to Formula One testing in Jerez now. And the biggest story of the week so far is the lack of mileage by the Renault-powered cars. Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel has managed just 11 slow laps over the last 2 days. Jenson Button has been out in his McLaren already. Days being split between him and Kevin Magnussen, but Button is now back in the garage. We got an early glimpse of the Caterham. More of that in a moment. Fernando Alonso has also been out on the track, this time with a huge array of monitoring equipment strapped to the side pod. Have a look at the end of the pit lane as Alonso returns from completing a few laps. You can just about make out the Caterham at the far end. Yeah, problems for the Caterham. Their mechanics having to get the car on a trolley to get it back into the garage. Well, you can see all of...
Now to some significant breaking news on Michael Schumacher's condition. Craig Slater joins us live on the line from F1 testing in Jerez. Craig, what can you tell us?
Well, I've just had a communication from Michael Schumacher's manager, Sabine Kem, and it confirms a story which was rumoured, which was suggested was underway by the French sports daily L'Equipe yesterday, that Michael Schumacher is now in the process of being taken out of the induced coma he's been in for the last 5 weeks. I'll just read you what Sabine Kem has emailed to me. She says that Michael's sedation is being reduced in order to allow the start of the waking up process, which may take a long time. For the protection of the family, it was originally agreed by the interested parties to communicate this information only once this process was consolidated. And then she goes on to say, please note that no further updates will be given. So a significant point in Michael Schumacher's recovery process has been reached. He's been in this induced coma for 5 weeks. It was a month to the day yesterday since his skiing accident in Maribel, but now his management confirming that they are beginning the process of taking him out of this coma, which has to be seen as a positive sign. My understanding is from sources in France that he is responding positively to this new phase of his treatment. So it had been thought that the longer, if he'd stayed very much longer in this comatose state, that it would be more problematic in terms of his ongoing treatment, because obviously there are issues like muscle wastage and that kind of thing. So it is a positive development that doctors have decided his brain activity and the stability of his condition enables him to be slowly taken out of this coma. So this is, I think, good news, but of course we can't get too much ahead of himself. The other significant issue is how much damage potentially has been done to Michael Schumacher's brain. What kind of activity? Has there been any significant damage to his brain function? I suppose we'll only find that out over the coming weeks.
You're obviously in Jerez at the moment for testing, but amongst the Formula One world, they'll be happy, I think, to hear this news. How has it been received in Jerez, and what are people's thoughts on this situation?
They have, of course, all been following this situation very closely. Formula One's a very tight-knit community. Michael Schumacher was pretty much, I suppose, the kingpin of F1 for the vast majority of his career. 7 world championships, particularly his own team Ferrari have tried to offer their support at every turn. Yesterday, outside Kimi Raikkonen's garage, the pit board had a message of support for Michael Schumacher. Forza Michael, it said. Michael Schumacher is still an ambassador for the Mercedes team. He had that 3-year comeback, which ended 2 years ago. Nico Rosberg was carrying a message, keep fighting Michael, on his car. So yes, people are very anxious that Michael Schumacher makes a full recovery, and I think this news will be very encouraging to the Formula One community. Ferrari, on their official website today, were saying that they were all praying for the day that Michael can once again come and visit Maranello. So yeah, nobody wants to get too ahead of themselves at this point, but this is a positive step, and I think it will ease people's anxiety within F1 that Michael Schumacher will make a recovery.
Okay, for now, Craig, thank you very much. Jenson Button set the fastest time of the morning on day 3 of Formula One's first pre-season test in Jerez. It's also been another frustrating day for Red Bull after Daniel Ricciardo broke down on his very first lap. Well, our cameras caught Button locking up the front tyres of his McLaren. That didn't seem, though, to slow him down as he finished top of the timesheets at midday. Fernando Alonso was second quickest in the standings, but that doesn't tell the full story as his Ferrari stopped out on track to bring out the day's first red flag. Mercedes Executive Director Toto Wolff and non-executive chairman Niki Lauda were interested spectators as Lewis Hamilton returned to the track for the first time since suffering a crash on day 1. Not a good morning for Caterham. Reserve driver Robin Frins stalled their car and engines had to bring it back on a roller. They did manage to get the car out again, but the engine wasn't running smoothly at all. I don't think it's supposed to sound like that. Toro Rosso seemed to have similar problems. So Hamilton among the top 3, and former team principal Ross Brawn thinks he's in a good position to challenge for the title.
He is a huge talent, there's no doubt. Incredibly quick driver, very gifted. It will be a challenging year in terms of application, putting in the time to all the different aspects of that will go into winning a race this season. And that's where Lewis has to make sure he makes a big effort. I'm sure he can do it, but he has to recognise, and I'm sure he has, that side of it will be just as important as driving the car quickly. And Lewis is more than capable of adapting to it, and if he does, then I think he can do very well.
Now coming up. Now, Michael Schumacher is being brought out of an induced coma and is responding positively, according to Sky sources. The 7 times Formula One champion is in a hospital in Grenoble with brain injuries after a skiing accident a month ago. Craig Slater is in Jerez, where the F1 teams are testing ahead of the new season.
This is clearly a significant development in Michael Schumacher's ongoing treatment, and one that will ease the anxiety of his fans and followers throughout the world. It confirms reports yesterday in the French media that he was gradually being brought out of the coma, the induced coma he's been in for the last 5 weeks. And his manager, Sabine Kem, today confirmed that Michael's sedation is being reduced in order to allow the start of the waking up process, which may take a long time. For the protection of the family, she goes on to say, it was originally agreed by the interested parties to communicate this information only once this process was consolidated. My sources in France have confirmed to me that Schumacher is responding positively to this new phase of his treatment, although we'll only get a full idea of how well he's progressing after a number of days. The news will be very much welcomed here in Jerez, where the Formula One teams continue their pre-season testing. There have been many messages of support for Michael Schumacher, notably his former team Mercedes, with whom he ended his career, carried a message of support on their car, and Ferrari have also been wishing him well. Indeed, on their official website today, they announced that all of their hopes and prayers were that one day Michael Schumacher could return to Maranello again. So this is clearly a positive development. However, it is the first step on what will be a long road to recovery for Michael Schumacher.
Schumacher's former team principal Ross Brawn spoke about him last night as Brawn was inducted into Motorsport magazine's Hall of Fame. Brawn believes the signs are encouraging.
He is stable, and there's no reason not to hope that we can see Michael make a recovery in the future. But it's such a serious injury and so early in the recovery process that it's unpredictable. But there's no negatives, and that's all we can hope at the moment. Just hope and pray, and keep our fingers crossed. I mean, I don't know if in these situations determination and the sort of character of Michael can count for anything, but if it can count for anything, then he's a person who will pull through.
Speak to our Formula One reporter, Craig Slater, who is in Spain. Craig is with us. What more can you tell us, Craig?
It is heartening news, this. There had been reports in the French media yesterday that this process of bringing Michael Schumacher out of his coma, a coma he's been in for the best part of 5 weeks. It was a month to the day yesterday since his accident, his skiing accident in Mirabel in the French Alps, that this process of bringing him out of the coma was already underway. Schumacher's management initially told us to dismiss any reports that didn't come from either the hospital or herself. But this morning, a statement from her confirming that this process, which she said would be a long process, had begun. Sky sources have confirmed to us recently that Schumacher is responding positively to this treatment and perhaps is already capable, or is rather already capable of making responses to very basic instructions his medics are giving him. So very heartening news on Michael Schumacher's condition, although it will be quite significant, a long process from this point. But yes, it's good to know that finally he is being awoken from this induced coma he has been in for the last 5 weeks. And news which will brighten the mood here in the paddock as well in Jerez. Great concern for Michael Schumacher's situation amongst the Formula One community. It's been another interesting day on the track here as well. Sky Sports F1's Ted Kravitz is here. And another day of struggles for Red Bull in particular. Just 3 laps with Sebastian Vettel on day 1, 8 laps yesterday, and only 3 laps for Daniel Ricciardo today. Is there a scenario where they might abandon running again halfway through this day?
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, it seems so unimportant discussing on the fate of a racing team when we're discussing Michael Schumacher, isn't it? And certainly everybody's thoughts with Michael and his family. But as significant as it is for the racing, it has been another dreadful day for Red Bull. And it couldn't have come at a worse time because the Red Bull co-owner, Dietrich Mateschitz, has turned up here, the man who owns half of Red Bull, the major company that it is. His assistant, his advisor, Dr. Helmut Marko, just there in the hoodie, the blue hoodie with his back to us, has accompanied him here, and they're here to witness the continuation of a very, very poor test. Only a few laps, no real running, no real learning about the new car, persistent overheating problems, some indication as to whether those problems are down to the over-aggressive packaging that Adrian Newey has designed around this car, or whether it's actually a problem with their engine suppliers, Renault, whether what they've supplied them isn't working with the packaging that Red Bull have designed. That's an argument that's really down to fine details, and it doesn't really matter, because what it means is that Red Bull, the reigning world champions, have not been able to use the first test in any meaningful way, and that's going to put them on their back foot for the season's preparations.
Team principal Christian Horner and chief designer Adrian Newey have left the circuit now. Rain is forecast tomorrow. Might Red Bull make a better use of their time back in Milton Keynes working on this problem rather than trying to salvage something here?
I don't know if you can hear the drilling in the background, the old dentist's drill going on behind garage door number 22 where we're just standing. So they are working on the car. They're seeing if they can change bodywork, change installation, and see if they can actually make it work. I mean, they've got this track time available. To answer your question, a day spent extra here working on the car or a day spent extra working on Milton Keynes probably wouldn't make that much of a difference. We've got 2 weeks between the end of this test and the beginning of the Bahrain test. Of course, that will probably shrink to a week and a half because they have to fly the car out to the Middle East, to Bahrain. So I don't think they'd be better served just calling a day right now. You never know. With the dentist drill, maybe they can achieve some good things and at least maybe get the car to run 5 laps, 10 laps, something like this. But we believe they're not going to run for the rest of the day. We believe that's another day over, day 3 at Jerez, and still no meaningful running for Red Bull Racing. We'll see whether the drilling gets them anywhere tomorrow.
You touched on the aggressive packaging that Adrian Newey likes to stipulate for the engine manufacturer, Renault in this case, but we've had other instances of Renault engines struggling since we've been here in Jerez. So is this a Red Bull problem or is it a Renault problem?
Well, it's a problem for them both. It's a bigger problem for Red Bull, really, because it's their responsibility to take all the elements from Renault, the battery, and then the battery control systems, the transformer, and then the energy recovery systems, both the one that runs off the turbo and the one that runs off the engine, and package it in a way that it's not going to overheat and break down and catch fire. Not that it has caught fire in Red Bull's case, but it certainly has overheated and it's been smoking out the back of the car and has broken down on numerous occasions. So I think ultimately you'd have to say that it's Red Bull Racing's fault. They get all the equipment in from a third supplier, which is Renault, and it's up to them to make it all work together, which they haven't.
Thank you very much, Ted. Yeah, whose fault it is, perhaps not at issue at the moment. It's finding a solution that will concern both Red Bull and Renault. But to update you on other matters here on the track, Mercedes and Ferrari both going well, piling up the laps. Those two engine manufacturers at least look to have done a good job and come here well prepared. The Renault engine still seems very much a work in progress.
OK, Craig, thank you very much for now.
Speak to Jerez, where it is day 3 of testing ahead of the new F1 season. Craig Slater is there for us. Hi, Craig, what's been happening today?
Thank you very much. Well, there are plenty of developments on the track. Mixed fortunes for various of the leading contenders we expect in this 2014 season. But I suppose the major issue on everyone's mind at the moment concerns the news coming from Grenoble today, and with Mercedes head of motorsport Toto Wolff that Michael Schumacher is being brought out of his coma. It must be welcome news. How has it been greeted at your team? I don't know, Michael is still a Mercedes ambassador.
Yeah, Michael is still part of the family, and obviously this is a big disaster for all of us, and hopefully that's good news. I don't have too much medical insight, but it sounds promising, and we are keeping all our fingers crossed.
The team have kept a dignified silence, if you like, over this situation, largely out of respect for Michael Schumacher's family. But you carried out a message of support on the car. You have been doing that. And how has this been felt during this whole period within the team itself?
Yeah, we thought about it, and I think so many people were jumping on every little bit of information. I think at that moment you have to be dignified and not talk about things you don't really understand. And we kept it. We did it in our way. We left a little message for him, and this is just to reflect that we are thinking about him.
We hope things continue to progress in a positive manner. But to get back to events on track, it's been a very strong start for Mercedes. Have you ticked every box? Have you got everything you wanted out of testing thus far? So, bar the little upset with Lewis Hamilton there with that front wing, but even that was fixed very quickly.
Yeah, that was fixed very quickly. It was a big joint effort. Bits were being flown back and forth from the UK. Satisfying. I think we're just very early days, and testing is running well so far. Yesterday we did 97 laps. We did another 60 or 62 today, which is very promising considering that the cars are all new. And yeah, I would say it's a promising start, but nothing to be extremely happy or extremely worried about.
What can you tell me about the expectations within Mercedes this year? A lot of preparation and investment has gone into building towards this year. Can you keep this momentum up? How determined are the team to make 2014 a Mercedes championship year?
The team is extremely determined. This is what we have been working for since a couple of years, the team. and HPP, our engine partner, we have been trying to, get together, and so I'm very delighted that this season has finally started, and yeah, let's see.
Are you working with the other Mercedes teams as well, who've also made a strong start? Jenson Button talked about the good level of cooperation, but I mean, you're competitors as well, so how does that balance out?
At the moment, it's important that every Mercedes engine-powered team does a lot of miles, because obviously we exchange information, and as an engine supplier, we understand much more the more miles we do. And this is important. So there is a constant exchange of opinions and just to make the engine more reliable.
Sure, an Austrian national, but and a German speaker. One of the few words of German I know is Schadenfreude, which I think means taking pleasure at others' misfortune. What have you made of Red Bull's struggles right now? And, is that a positive sign for you, or do you expect them to recover quickly from this difficult situation they're in?
First of all, I expect them to recover quickly. And the other thing is, we as old sportsmen, and as I said before, it's very early days. You can't say anything. They seem to struggle a little bit with their powertrain or with the engine, and they're going to recover, I'm 100% sure.
You're Executive Director, Head of Motorsport here. It's been remarked that you don't have a team principal now. Obviously, Ross has departed. You spoke about what a contribution he's made over the last couple of days at the circuit. McLaren Mercedes don't have a team principal either. Do you think that's becoming a rather outmoded concept in Formula One, an old-style team boss?
We have discussed that many times, and for me, the terminology of team principal is when the big iconic founders, Frank Williams and Ron Dennis, have been running those teams, and these were organizations with 100 or 200 people. Nowadays, we are 600 or 700, and it needs various competences and skills, and this is why we have shaped our organization like we did, and some others will follow, I guess.
So, you mean more additions? Are you happy with the command structure you've got? Because I hear Martin Whitmarsh might be available.
We are happy with our current management structure.
Okay, thank you very much. But just finally then, how confident can you be, and what's the best way to build on this strong start you've made? I mean, you've got to keep your foot on the accelerator all the way through pre-season testing, I guess.
Yes, it's about reliability at the moment. Performance is not the priority, and I guess this is what we are looking now, and we want to take every day as it comes and do the best out of it.
Toto Wolff, thank you very much indeed, and good luck for the start of the season as well. Yep, Toto Wolff, obviously behind Lewis Hamilton's bid to win a second World Championship. Mercedes have made a wonderful start to pre-season testing, more laps than anyone else, and of course with Red Bull struggling at this early stage, it really does look good for them.
Craig, thank you very much indeed. To Jerez. Now, the top two in charge of Red Bull Racing are flying back to their UK headquarters in an attempt to turn around their fledgling start to the pre-season testing. Team Principal Christian Horner and Chief Technical Officer Adrian Newey will return to Milton Keynes after the new RB10 suffered an energy recovery system failure for the second day running. The presence of owner Dietrich Mateschitz, second from left at the track this morning, perhaps showed the severity of their problems. And it got much worse after Daniel Ricciardo left the pits, because the car broke down on its very first lap and was soon returning on the back of a recovery truck. They then decided to stop running for the day. Ricciardo looking eager to discover what the issue was as he returned to the garage. So frustrations there, and at Ferrari after Fernando Alonso was left stranded on the track when his Ferrari broke down. The recovery truck was called into action again, but they have been able to continue testing since then. But the biggest concerns are definitely at Red Bull, with Horner heading back to Milton Keynes. Afterwards, we tried to speak with advisor to the team, Dr. Helmut Marko.
Dr. Marko, are you available for a very quick comment, sir? How disappointing has today been?
So, problems for Red Bull, needing to rectify those ahead of the new season. And of course, you can see all the races live on Sky Sports. The season beginning with the
Formula One now. McLaren's Kevin Magnussen topped the timesheets on day 3 in Jerez. The rookie beat the Ferrari of Fernando Alonso to first place, but isn't getting complacent at this early stage.
We all prefer to be at the front, but not at winter testing. It doesn't really matter. It's at this moment we're working hard at trying to get on top when it matters. So we'll see.
Changed over with Jensen today. What have your conversations with him been like, and how helpful has he been to you thus far?
Well, I've followed his testing so far and tried to understand as much as possible out from his comments and his feedback from the car. So I think so far it's been really good. I've learned, I think we've all learned a lot about the car already, which is very positive because I think we all expected to have more problems. Quite positively surprised by the reliability so far, but yeah, I think all in all pretty positive.
More transfer news now, and Norwich.
Formula One. Now, Michael Schumacher is being slowly brought out of his induced coma. We understand he's been responding positively. The 7-time Formula One world champion suffered a serious head injury in a skiing accident in the French Alps almost a month ago. He was put into a medically induced coma following operations to remove blood clots on his brain. Well, doctors at the hospital in Grenoble have begun to reduce his sedation to begin the waking up process, but his agent Sabine Kem has warned the process could take a long time. Earlier we spoke to neurologist Matthew Crocker, who explained the process of bringing a patient out of a coma.
The process of gradually withdrawing the sedation and the drugs that are keeping the patient in a coma is a fairly slow one. And during this time there are initial observations to see how the person's doing in terms of their blood pressure, their heart rate and various other things, and possibly the condition of their brain. But as this moves on and the sedation gradually is withdrawn, the person wakes up from what is essentially a very long anaesthetic, 3 or 4 weeks sometimes. And at this point the person wakes up as they would from an anaesthetic and starts to be able to talk or make simple gestures with their hands and legs. They may even obey commands. Undoubtedly, the anaesthetic drugs that have kept him in a coma for a long period of time will take some time to wear off. And during this time, the person gradually makes some progress neurologically and the function of their brain starts to pick up as you'd expect. But there's inevitably a concern about ongoing or underlying brain damage. And the extent of that only becomes absolutely clear once the people looking after the patient are very clear that the drugs that are keeping them asleep have completely worn off. So the period of establishing how much recovery there will be can take very many days, weeks, or months or longer sometimes.
Well, tributes to Michael Schumacher have continued as Formula One teams take part in pre-season testing. He won 5 straight titles with Ferrari before retiring, then coming back to the sport with Mercedes.
Michael is still part of the family, and obviously this is a big disaster for all of us, and hopefully that's good news. Don't have too much medical insight, but it sounds promising and we are keeping all our fingers crossed.
The team support on the car, you have been doing that, and how has this been felt during this whole period within the team itself?
Yeah, we thought about it, and I think so many people were jumping on every little bit of information. I think at that moment you have to be dignified and not talk about things you don't really understand, and we kept it. We did it in our way. We left a little message for him, and this is just to reflect that we are thinking about him.
Rugby Union now, and Stuart Lancaster. Now, we told you earlier that Michael Schumacher is gradually being brought out of his coma, and news of Schumacher's improvement was welcomed at Jerez, where it was the 3rd day of pre-season testing. And for the 2nd day in a row, a McLaren set the fastest time of the day. This time it was Kevin Magnussen who was quickest after he took over from Jenson Button this afternoon. Felipe Massa was 2nd on his debut for Williams, with Lewis Hamilton in 3rd. Red Bull, though, continued to struggle as they only managed 3 laps with Daniel Ricciardo. Let's get more on this. Let's head to the Jerez track and join Craig Slater, who is live there for us this evening. Craig, another frustrating day for Red Bull then.
Yeah, they're having problems early on in pre-season testing. They've only managed 14 laps in total, and we've now had a quarter of the running ahead of the first Grand Prix of the season, 3 days out of 12. So real issues for them and many of the Renault-powered teams in actual fact. Now, they had to stop their running after just 3 hours today. Daniel Ricciardo waited in the garage for what seemed an eternity. Eventually did get out. He only managed to complete 7 corners of his first lap before the car stopped. He was hauled back into the pits. He got out for another couple of laps later in the day, but Red Bull say they discovered a fault which needed significant attention, so they ended their running early today. And since then, team boss Christian Horner and chief designer Adrian Newey have flown back to Milton Keynes, so it does look as though they really have to get back to the drawing board, particularly with this power unit. It's how the power unit marries with the car itself. I mean, Red Bull was saying this is a Renault problem rather than a Red Bull problem, but it could be that the housing, the aggressive housing that Adrian Newey stipulates for the power unit may have something to do with the problems they're having at the moment. Daniel Ricciardo himself was fairly sanguine after today's test session. He said there's no need to panic at this stage and that he'll hopefully be back in the car tomorrow. But Red Bull, the defending Constructors' champions, Sebastian Vettel, the Drivers' champion, have begun 2014 very much on the back foot.
And Red Bull, Craig, not the only team with reliability issues. Tell us about Ferrari's Fernando Alonso. He had problems too.
He did this morning, but it was an isolated issue for Alonso. And generally speaking, the Ferrari has looked pretty solid thus far in pre-season testing. I've just been having a word with him, incidentally. He was very moved also by the positive news coming out of Grenoble about Michael Schumacher. But yeah, a decent number of laps covered by Ferrari today. They did have that one breakdown in the morning, just a system precautionary check as far as I understand it, so nothing significant. But like Mercedes, they've had already sensors, significant number of sensors on the car, and aero paint as well, so they're a little bit further down the road, it seems, than Red Bull are, and they're already beginning to work on setup and the finer points of tuning their car, which, bear in mind, we are very early in pre-season testing, is a positive sign for them.
We are early into pre-season, as you say, but McLaren had a good day yesterday. Were they able to continue that progress today, Craig?
Yeah, they also changed their driving schedule today because Jenson Button missed all of day one because of an electrical fault. So he began the day, and then young Kevin Magnussen, the 21-year-old Dane, took over from him in the afternoon. Button was fastest in the morning, and Kevin Magnussen was fastest in the afternoon, and he had quite a big grin on his face, even though he was playing down the fact that he topped the timesheets. But it's been a very positive start for McLaren, indeed all the Mercedes engine cars. Button has talked about how good the cooperation has been between the Mercedes cars, the Mercedes Works team, Williams as well, and Mercedes Power and Force India as well as McLaren. He says there's a good sharing of information going on despite the fact that they are competitors. Today's quickest time by Magnussen was a full second faster than anything we've had thus far, so maybe signs that some of the teams at least are beginning to stretch the legs of these new cars. It's mostly been about mechanical and system checks up to this point, but we're seeing the engines being pushed a little bit harder, and the sound of those V6 engines, hearteningly, seemed a good bit louder today, which will be pleasing for a lot of F1 fans who maybe worried that they were a little bit quiet.
Craig, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much indeed.
It's really just incredibly impressive to see the team, you know, with the first ones out on the first day. Obviously, I had the issues with the front wing, but we've fixed that, and we're working on improving that for the future. But to get, just by watching all the other teams who haven't been out hardly at all, for example, the Red Bull, you would imagine the Red Bulls would be doing easily as many laps as us with their track record, but obviously they've had some issues as well. So it just shows you how technical it is and how difficult it is for every team and how challenging it is. And to see us out there doing 97 laps, way above the rest, is a huge accomplishment from the team. It's really...
Schumacher is being slowly brought out of his coma, and we understand he has been responding to that positively. The 7 times Formula One world champion suffered a serious head injury in a skiing accident in the French Alps almost exactly a month ago now. He was put into a medically induced coma following operations to remove blood clots from his brain. Well, doctors at the hospital in Grenoble have begun to reduce his sedation to begin the waking up process, but his agent Sabina Kaim has warned that the process could take a long time. Earlier on, we spoke to neurologist Matthew Crocker, who explained the process of bringing a patient out of a coma.
A prolonged medically induced coma will take some time to wear off. There are various drugs that keep people asleep, and they're essentially the same drugs that are used for a prolonged general anaesthetic. Whereas most anaesthetics for surgery last a matter of 2 to 4 hours. This anaesthetic will have lasted for many weeks, and so it will take the patient a significant period of time, longer than a normal anaesthetic, to wake up. The process of them waking up is undoubtedly the combination of 2 factors. The drugs that are keeping them asleep have to wear off, but there will be the potential major underlying insult to the brain itself. from which the person will undoubtedly make a very slow recovery. So patients with a significant head injury never wake up quickly, but that's partly because of the drugs, and it's usually partly because of the significance of the underlying injury, and the extent of that is still unclear. There is a vast spectrum of recovery from a near normal recovery, which is most unusual after 3 to 4 weeks in a coma for a head injury, but nonetheless it is observed occasionally, all the way through to very poor states of recovery with primitive responses only.
Tributes to Schumacher have continued as Formula One teams take part in pre-season testing. He won 5 straight titles with Ferrari before retiring and then coming back to the motorsport with Mercedes.
Obviously, it's a very good news, you know, that slowly they will try to wake up him, and you know, we all hope and we all pray every day that that wake up will be a happy one.
Michael is still part of the family, and obviously this is a big disaster for all of us, and hopefully that's good news. I don't have too much medical insight, but it sounds promising, and we are keeping all our fingers crossed.
The team support on the car, you have been doing that, and how has this been felt during this whole period within the team itself?
Yeah, we thought about it, you know, and I think so many people were jumping on every little bit of information. I think at that moment you have to be dignified and not talk about things you don't really understand, and we kept it, we did it in our way. We left a little message for him, and this is just to reflect that we are thinking about him.
Well, the news about Schumacher was welcomed in the pit lane during the 3rd day of pre-season testing, and it was McLaren who were quickest for the 2nd day in a row. This time it was their new driver, Kevin Magnussen, who went fastest, half a second quicker than Felipe Massa on his debut for Williams. Lewis Hamilton was 3rd for Mercedes, but it was another bad day for Red Bull, as Daniel Ricciardo only managed to complete 3 laps.
Not the way he had hoped to start his day. Fernando Alonso had to watch his F14 put onto the back of the recovery truck. But it was a short break in what proved to be another day of good running for Ferrari.
It's a nice feeling to get back in the car after a few months that we were not able to run, and obviously simulator give you an idea, but it's always a video game, let's say, so it's nice to be back on the car with some spectators also around, which is always very nice.
Mercedes also showed reliability on day 3. Lewis Hamilton had added a turbo to his snowmobile over the winter to help him get used to the feeling. He completed another 62 laps, but is still learning.
We don't have the blown diffuser anymore, so that's a huge amount of downforce that we lose. So when we get on power, the rear is much weaker than what we experienced in the last couple of years. So you have a lot more wheel spin generally, and otherwise it's a Formula 1 car still. You know, you got a lot of power. When you have new tyres, the power is pretty impressive.
Mercedes powered cars again performed well. Felipe Massa in his new team posted the 2nd fastest time of the day and completed 47 laps. But he was pipped by rookie Kevin Magnussen. McLaren's new driver only took over the car at lunchtime from Jenson Button, but within just 2 hours of running, posted the fastest time of the week. Were you surprised how comfortable it was?
I would say I was surprised that it's a lot of power, and I thought that would be more difficult to handle, but I think Mercedes has done a good job, and the car feels positive, so yeah.
Engine noise has been a big talking point of 2014, and the difference between the cars was clear. The Renault-powered Caterham managed just 10 laps. Red Bull's testing time continued, as Daniel Ricciardo went out in the RB10, but couldn't complete the lap and was back in the garage soon after, minus the car. Red Bull's day didn't get any better, and the bosses were in town keeping a keen eye on proceedings, but all they saw was 3 laps. Red Bull say there's no need to panic about their situation this early into winter testing. However, team principal Christian Horner and chief designer Adrian Newey have flown back to Milton Keynes. Are they heading back to the drawing board? Craig Slater, Sky Sports, Jerez.